Hello, welcome to this video that's going to be my May media log. This will be all the manga I've read throughout the month, books, and anything else I feel like including, usually music as well. So there will be timestamps, but to start we have the manga. So it's about the first week in May, and we are starting this month off much better than last month already. If you don't know what the situation was, go watch my April media log, but I have completed a series. I read volumes 1 to 17 of All Out. I'm continuing with my trend of trying to read a sports manga a month this year, so this was my pick for May. This is a rugby manga. I had previously seen the anime, but that was a long time ago, and for some reason the manga was calling out to me. My library had the first 9 volumes, and then I read the rest on the K-manga app, so it worked out really well, and overall, I like this manga. But are we surprised? I'm not picky with sports manga, so literally anything decent I'll think is good, but the story is about our main character, Gion. He's starting high school, he's very short, so he's always been underestimated in sports and in life. And he ends up meeting this kid on the first day of school who is super tall and finds out that he is in the rugby club. And when he goes to check out the club, he is immediately entranced by the fact that no matter what size he is, he can tackle these big old buff dudes. So at first, to him, it's kind of not a revenge, but it's kind of proving to others that he can be good at a sport, kind of. But throughout the process, he makes friends, meets other players, other teams, learns teamwork aspects. They get a new coach along the way that turns them from an underdog team into a team that is, winning games. So I guess if you want the basic tropes, it's short, kid, main character, underdog, kind of the setup of haikyu, and they're trying to go to the rugby high school nationals. And like I said, overall, I thought this manga was entertaining. It wasn't anything amazing. It wasn't until the second half where things really picked up, in my opinion. I think the strongest suit was actually the games. And in some sports manga, admittedly, the games can get a little tedious or a little boring, especially if you don't know much about the sport. I know nothing about rugby, but I was entertained. Each game brought a different dynamic. I liked learning about the characters. And the art was gorgeous to me. I don't know. I really liked it. Some of the characters are really cutesy looking, but then some of them are these buff high school dudes that look like JoJo characters. So I thought the dichotomy was really funny, and I thought the action was really fluid. But yeah, the story was super simple, just this team training up, trying to win matches, stuff like that. The author kind of tried to do some character work, I guess, but it felt kind of random. You're getting these elaborate backstories for characters on the team, but the main character kind of gets lost in the sauce a little bit. I'm glad that we're getting these spotlights on these characters and kind of seeing where they're coming from and their background and their struggles, but it was definitely at the expense of the main character. So yeah, TLDR, I thought this was good, nothing amazing, had some good characters, good action, but a pretty, basic plot, and I wasn't blown away, but I'm glad I read it. This is also significantly shorter than some of the other sports manga I read this year so far, but I think it ended at a good spot. It was conclusive, it was satisfying, and was a good wrap-up to this decent series. And also so far this month, I caught up with The Fragrant Flower Blooms with Dignity. I don't really talk about the series I read weekly digitally, because it's just automatic, I don't even think about it, but I had 15 chapters stocked up of this, so I think it's the equivalent of volumes 11 and 12, so since I read a bigger chunk, I'll talk about it, but I love this series so much, and this section of the story especially, chapter 100, if you know, you know, which is so cute, so satisfying. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited for the physical release of this so more people can get into the series. But the basic premise is it's about this guy who's kind of delinquent looking, kind of scary looking. He goes to this school that is right next to this all-girls school that's very prim and proper. And the main character meets one of these girls through his family's bakery, and they, strike up a friendship, then relationship. And it's a lot about, self-discovery, breaking stereotypes, seeing people for who they truly are, personal growth through the help of your friends and family. It's just an overall beautiful story, and I highly recommend it. I think I put it as one of my top reads of last year, and it definitely stands up to that title. Okay, hello. I have read a couple more volumes so far, which includes me catching all the way up with the Apothecary Diaries. Finally! I think in March I had wanted to catch up all the way, but I got distracted. But that's besides the point, because I caught up, and what more can I say? I love the series so much. Volume 11 especially was so good. Spattered throughout, we have some more kind of smaller mysteries, but we are getting closer and closer to kind of some of the overarching plot points getting resolved, including who Jinshi really is, so that's exciting. I really do love the structure of this though. Like, if you don't know what the story is about, it's about this girl named Mama who gets kidnapped and sent to work in the imperial inner court, but she's an apothecary by trade. She knows a lot about medicines and herbs and plants. So once some people in the inner palace discover this, they put her to work as the poison tester for one of the concubines of the emperor. And she ends up getting dragged into solving all kinds of mysteries around the court. So we have these like smaller mysteries that she's solving, but they all serve a purpose and connect to like the bigger overarching plot. And it's so good. The characters are great, the mysteries are great, the art is great. I know the anime came out for this recently, so a lot of people have gotten into it that way, and I highly recommend you read the manga. I have the light novel on pre-order. I think it's actually coming out this month, the first volume. So super excited to see the source material for everything. And yeah, I just really love the Apothecary Diaries. I'm glad I was finally able to catch up all the way. Love everything about this. And then a little bit different, I started and caught up to a new webtoon called To the Stars and Back. It's been a long time since I have started a new webtoon, honestly. I kind of stick to like my tried and true faves and just keep up with those weekly. But I had asked for recommendations for webtoons a while ago, and I was just, sifting through those and found this one and decided to check it out. And it's a really cute story. I mean, I caught up all the way to this in one sitting. It's about two guys in college and they end up becoming neighbors. One guy is super grumpy, reclusive, thinks he doesn't need any friends, stuff like that, while the other guy is just like this happy, sunshiny guy. Definitely the whole grumpy sunshine trope, if you like that. And they slowly become closer, starting as friends and then something more. And for the most part, it's super wholesome, fluffy, feel-good type beat. But both of the main characters kind of have some hard things in their past. So there's a smidge of angst, a smidge of kind of overcoming trauma, healing, things related to that, which I always love in stories. So yeah, this was the perfect little pick me up to catch up in a couple hours, and I'm excited to continue on weekly with this. So thank you to the person who recommended me this, and I would recommend it if you want a kind of light, fun read. Hello, it is the end of the month, and I'll recap all the rest of the stuff I have read. Starting with, I have this chunk of volumes from Isa Press and Yen Press. I did a whole volume with my in-depth thoughts on these, so I'll link that in the card, but I'll just run through these really quickly. The Perks of Being an S-Class Heroine, this was my favorite one of the bunch. I really liked this isekai, with the main character kind of starting out at a really high level, even though this is a very difficult novel that she's been placed in. Really fun. I liked kind of the ranking and the power system. Looking forward to more volumes. Itaewon Class, I really liked this first volume. About a guy deciding to open up a restaurant for revenge purposes. The only thing I didn't like about this one was the art, so I may switch to the drama for this one. Friday at the Atelier was pretty good. It was kind of a quirky setup between this artist and this girl who decides to be his model. But the subject of his paintings are kind of weird, but I'm intrigued to see kind of the direction of their relationship. B-Strings, this was kind of just a boring one-shot in a Beastars-esque world with some short stories that I didn't really feel particularly connected to. Fox Color Jealousy, this was kind of a cute one-shot about a guy that's possessed by this fox spirit and this guy who helps him out with that, but it turns out this guy is his cousin, so that like totally put a damper on this volume for me. My Gemini, this was a nice one-shot, I think, pretty impactful, about these twins that kind of switch places sometimes, and their friend who's the only one who can really tell them apart. Adults Picture Book Volume 1. This was an okay Volume 1. I think the setup was a little bit weird, and it depends on the direction this goes in, whether it can be like really good or really bad. It's about this guy whose friend passes away and he ends up taking in that friend's daughter. He asks this woman to be his wife, and they're gonna try out, living as a family, but yeah. Mixed feelings about this one. Tied to You, this one had kind of the red string of fate trope. The main character ends up tied to his crush's brother, but the brother is very creepy in my opinion, so won't be continuing with this one. The Uncanny Counter, this one I was definitely intrigued by. Another one that has a live action drama that I might watch, but this one is about a guy who kind of gets roped into this group that are exorcising these bad spirits that are coming into their world. Coffee Moon, this one was okay, kind of a time loop story where the main character is reliving her birthday over and over and over again. I think this one was a good setup to like the potential mystery and stuff, but it didn't have me completely hooked from the first volume. Same with Akko and Bambi, this one is about a author who writes horror stories, and there's this kind of ghost girl living in his apartment, but not everything is as it seems, but I wasn't completely hooked by this first volume either. So yeah, that's kind of a quick run through all these volume 1s and one-shots. But like I said, my in-depth thoughts are in another video. And other than those, I read a couple other volumes. I read volume 8 of Cross My Love Otaku X Punk. One of my favorite series. I always read these volumes right when they come in. It's more of the typical shenanigans, the cross-dressing, the messiness, the friend group, stuff like that. But with every volume, I feel like we're getting a little bit closer to kind of a resolution or kind of a big reveal moment, you know? But that's not really why I'm reading this series. I just love the characters and the shenanigans. It's great to me. And then I read volume 5 of The Yakuza's Guide to Babysitting. It has been a long time since I read one of these volumes, but I thoroughly enjoyed jumping back into the story. With this volume specifically, we're getting hints at some more backstory with our main character, in addition to kind of the cute, family-oriented type stuff, with a little bit of Yakuza and action thrown in there sometimes. I really enjoy this series, and I wish the volumes came out faster, but I know this is a small publisher, so patiently waiting for more. And then that leads us to a segment that I don't think I've ever had before in one of these videos. I wouldn't necessarily call it a segment, but I read multiple light novels this month, including one that's kind of lumped in with a manga. I read volume 1 of the manga for If the Villainess and the Villain Met and Fell in Love in my volume 1 trilogue, and I liked it so much that I picked up the first volume of the light novel and read it. And I'm really glad I did. I don't know, I really like this story so far. It's basically about this girl, and right at the beginning she gets dumped by her fiance, who's this prince guy, because he thinks that she's bullying his friend. So she gets kind of kicked to the curb. She's already looked down upon in the school because she's contracted with this no-name spirit. In this world, you're contracted with like a spirit to help with your magic. And even though she's technically a noble, she is not contracted with a strong spirit. So everyone is like looking down on her now. And in her misery, she kind of befriends this other guy who I guess is deemed the villain. He's this super smart kid at the school, but he's very cold, like he doesn't really talk to anyone else. Has the air of he thinks he's better than everyone. But you come to learn that he's really not like that. He's actually really nice, and they end up having like a competition over their grades, like who can score the best on the test. He sticks up for her through some of the bullying she's facing. And yeah, I don't know, I just really like this story. The light novel volume 1 goes kind of way past this manga volume 1, which is to be expected, and the developments are great. There's a little bit of action, a little bit of romance, fantasy, some political things, some pretty dark topics explored too. Because she's not contracted with this high-level spirit, her family has kind of banished her, ignored her. She has a lot of trauma from that. So yeah, even though this might be kind of basic in the villainess genre, I guess, in terms of plot, I think this could be something special, and I'm definitely gonna pick volume 2 of the light novel up. I just didn't want to wait for more of the manga, honestly. And that leads us in to the next light novel I read, which is volume 1 of the Other Worlds books Depend on the Bean Counter. This is another one where I am reading the manga, but it was really nice to revisit the story in like the original form. If you don't know what the series is about, it's about this salaryman accountant guy who gets dragged to this other world. They're trying to summon this like holy maiden, and he kind of just gets sucked into the portal with her. So he ends up in this other world. They weren't planning for him to be there. He was not planning to be there. So he's kind of just like, okay, well, I guess I can work. Like, that's all he knows is work, work, work. So he gets put to work in the accounting department of this world, realizes how messed up it is, so he makes it his mission to kind of pull it together. But in this, like, kind of parallel universe, there is magic that he doesn't have any resistance to, because he's, you know, like a human from Earth. And this knight character who has really advanced magic ends up helping him acclimate to the magic in this world, which involves some sexual things. But I think compared to the manga, the light novel is pretty one-to-one comparison. Like, maybe the light novel has a little bit more detail on some more like mundane things, some descriptions, but I would say go to the light novel if you're like a really big fan of the manga, or you want to get ahead in the story. I think volume 2 of the light novel is coming out in June, but this first volume covers like 3.5 volumes of the manga. So like I said, I would recommend the light novel if you want to get ahead in the story, not necessarily get like a more in-depth look, I guess. With If the Villainess and the Villain Fell in Love, I feel like that light novel was much more detailed than the manga adaptation. I haven't read too many light novels, so I'm not sure what is more common, like for a light novel and the manga to be like a one-to-one comparison, or if a manga tends to change up a lot of things, or vice versa. But I got the Apothecary Diaries light novel this month, so planning to read that soon, and then I have a handful of others, like more My Happy Marriage volumes that I'm behind on. So yeah, I've been kind of in a light novel kick. These 2 light novels were like the last things I read in the month. and I thoroughly enjoyed my time with them. So yeah, if you have any more light novel recommendations, let me know. I've been a fan of kind of fantasy, romance, isekai ones that I've read so far, so yeah, kind of surprised about that, but not mad at it. Okay, now onto the books. I have read one book so far this month, and that is One of Us is Lying. I wanted something kind of lighter and fun after I finished The Goldfinch last month, and honestly, I think this accomplished that. I ended up reading this book in a couple sittings. It was pretty fast-paced, pretty short, and overall enjoyable. The premise is that there's these 5 kids in high school. They all happen to get detention on the same day, and one of the kids ends up going into anaphylactic shock and dies. So the book is kind of trying to figure out how this happened. Obviously, the 4 other kids that were in the room with him are the key suspects. So you kind of go through the whole school, kind of turning their backs on them, the police being on their case, them trying to work together to, clear their names, or also figure out if, one of the other is the killer. So yeah, I thought it was fun in that aspect. It did read very YA in my opinion, but I knew what I was getting into with this. It was nothing amazing, but it was enjoyable, and I'm glad that I read it. It was the perfect kind of palate cleanser for me, I guess. And I ended up giving it a 7-star. I can't seem to escape the 3.5 to 4 out of 5 star range with my book reading lately, so hopefully I can bump that up a little bit. But I don't know what's worse, really bad books, just okay ones, a mixture, having everything be amazing that you're reading. I don't know, I like a little bit of a balance. Also with my manga, you can't be reading these big profound works 24/7. So yeah, that's why I'm happy with this. I think there's 2 other books in the series, so I might pick those up also when I need kind of something like this in the future. But the characters weren't super gripping or memorable, so I'm not attached to this world in that sense. I'm not itching to see what happens next with them, but they did what they needed to do. Okay, hello, it's about a week later, and I did end up reading the next book in the One of Us is Lying series, One of Us is Next. And I found this installment to be another kind of enjoyable quick read. The premise of this one is it's kind of a year later from the events of the first book. We're following a new-ish cast of characters at the same school where a new kind of game has popped up called the Truth or Dare game, where people's secrets get revealed if they don't take the dares, and the person behind it seems to be channeling the kind of guy from the first book with his whole creating drama and chaos in the school. But I feel like this installment was much darker in tone. Things seemed to have more serious consequences, and the subject matter was definitely darker overall. I was actually genuinely surprised by some of the twists, even though the overall mystery was pretty predictable. And I also like the POV characters better in this book. I don't know if I mentioned it, but the format is each chapter is from a different perspective. And in this one, there's 3 characters, while in the first book there were 4, and none of them were particularly likable, while in this book there was some more likable POV characters, I guess. I will say a negative, though, is that there's a couple questionable things in both of these books so far that aren't really acknowledged at all, including some kind of questionable age gaps with the romance. And then in the first book, 2 of the characters are kind of caught cheating, but only one of them really gets crucified for it, while the other, it gets brushed under the rug. So I don't know, maybe it didn't bother me as much in the first book because it was, lighter in tone. It read very YA. While in this second book, the issues were more glaring, I guess because it was going the more serious route. I'm not sure, maybe that's why I was a bit more bothered this time around, but I was like, wait a minute, this guy's in college, isn't this girl 16? Does nobody see the issue here? I don't know. There's just a couple instances like that that have me giving it the major side eye, but those points aside, it was still kind of an enjoyable, light, quick read, and I am interested to read the last book. The second book also gets a 3.5 stars. It wasn't anything amazing. I think it was an improvement from the first book, but it didn't bump it up to the next level or anything like that, in my opinion. Okay, and then moving on to another segment that I rarely have in these videos, but I guess shows/movies. So first, I watched the whole show on Netflix of A Business Proposal. I don't really know what compelled me to. I know the manhwa is releasing physically in English, and I've been seeing a lot of people enjoying it, but I didn't know if I wanted to commit to getting the manhwa, so I decided to just watch the drama, and I think it was pretty good. The basic premise is that this girl ends up going on a blind date with the CEO of her company. her best friend kind of asks her to go on this blind date for her, make it terrible so the guy does not want to like keep dating or whatever, because she's tired of her family trying to set her up on these blind dates. But the CEO guy is also kind of in the same position. His grandfather has been pressuring him to get married, and he decides, well, I'm just gonna marry whoever shows up to this date. Like, even if she is crazy, I don't care. Like, I just want my grandpa to get off my back. So this starts this whole, like, chaotic romance where the main character is, like, pretending to be her friend still, hiding from him at work, trying her best to be super weird to, like, get this guy to dump her. It's pretty cheesy. It has its good moments. There is, like, a secondary couple between the CEO's secretary and the best friend, and I think, honestly, they had more chemistry and I liked their story better. But overall, it was cute, and I would recommend it. I'm considering getting the manhwa, because I was kind of looking it up to see if the drama was the full story, and I guess there's some stuff it leaves out. The ending was a little bit unsatisfying, and I think the manhwa, like, fleshes it out a little better, so yeah, that's why I would consider reading the manhwa. It's on Tapas, but I'm not a fan of the Tapas platform, honestly. Like, if it's not on Webtoon, I probably won't read it, so we'll see. It did quench my thirst for kind of a businessman, rich person slash commoner type trope thing. I do like those stories, so I'm glad I watched it. I binged it all in like a day when I wasn't feeling very well, so it was the perfect that kind of show. But then other than that, I watched one more thing, I guess, this month, and it was the haikyu movie. I went to the theater. I don't know the last time I went to the movie theater. I went with my best friend, her boyfriend, and our other friend, and it was a great experience overall. It was cool to see, like, the game blown up on the big screen, but I don't want to say too much about the movie because it's pretty far into the series. But if you're unfamiliar, haikyu has not had an anime season in like 4 years. It's been a long time coming, and in that 4-year period, they announced that there was going to be 2 more movies to complete the series, but there's a lot more content to adapt. So honestly, it was pretty disappointing to hear that announcement. Haikyu is one of the few series that I like really keep up with the anime for. But I decided, you know, we're just gonna make the best of it. Let's just see what the movie entails. This movie covers one game, whereas we've had previous seasons covering one whole game. So I think they were able to highlight some key moments, but it definitely felt like a SparkNotes summarized version of the game. So keep that in mind if you're going to see it. I had reread the whole haikyu manga like in February, so this was especially fresh in my mind, and I could like pick out what was kind of missing and what they did well, the stuff they added like original for the movie. So yeah, it was a good time. I think they did their best with like this movie format. There was some crazy kind of animation directorial stuff. The last point of the match, like, that was cinema. That was cinema, I will say. So yeah, I think it did certain characters and certain moments justice for sure, but there was a couple things I wish would have been fleshed out more. And like the upcoming parts that they haven't adapted are some of my favorite parts of the manga, so I don't know how it's gonna go, fitting it all into one more movie apparently. This movie was wildly successful in Japan, especially, and I think the Philippines, it did really well. So hopefully this gives them a sign that we want like more seasons, not just movies, but it is what it is. If you watch the haikyu movie, let me know what you thought. My best friend really enjoyed it, even though she's not like a huge haikyu fan. I kind of like summarized what happened up to that point. So I think it's an enjoyable like standalone movie. But last summer I saw the Slam Dunk final movie, and that was like amazing. So comparing it to that, it was kind of like, okay. I gave it like a 7 out of 10 overall. It was good. I love to see these characters again on the screen, but knowing like how great this game is in the manga, I can't give it more than that, you know? So yes, that is my spiel on the haikyu movie. It was good, but it could have been better. If it was a full season or like a 10-hour movie or like, you know, whatever. But yeah, that is all the things I watched in the month, and now we're gonna go over to the things I listened to. Okay, so last month was just like a total flop in terms of all media, so I'll talk about like a couple albums from April that I listened to this month. The biggest one I want to shout out is Extraordinary Heroes' full album. It rocked my world. It was so good. I like every song on the album. My favorite is probably Dreamin' Girl, but if you like rock music, I highly recommend you check them out. Crazy, crazy, crazy album. So yes, really glad I got the chance to listen to that. I listened to Do Young's album. He had some good bops in there. A little more like pop upbeat than I was expecting. I was expecting it to be like a ballad album, to be honest, like something maybe Chen would release from EXO, but I was pleasantly surprised. I would have liked it either way, like with his beautiful voice, but glad there were some good songs on there. And then another band that had an album, Wonwee, it was pretty good. I like some songs from there. They're not my favorite Korean band, but I always listen to their stuff. I always find a handful of things I like in there. But moving on to May, I'm also kind of behind on the May releases. Everyone decided to release stuff at the very end of the month, so yeah, I just haven't had a chance to go through aespa's album completely, ATEEZ, Artemis, like, those will be in the next video, I guess, if I think they're worth shouting out. But for what I did listen to, definitely want to shout out Kino from Pentagon's. His album was really good. I love every song on it. Really funky, kind of quirky songs. Reminds me of kind of like Shine era Pentagon. So definitely check it out if you like that sort of vibe. I really liked TOZ's album. My favorite song of the month is probably Hello to My World by them. They are a group of Japanese boys who participated on Boys Planet, including Haruto, which was like one of my favorite guys on the show, along with Keita. But Keita's in even, so that would have been perfect if like Haruto, Keita, and like some of the other trainees were in a group. But I really like it. They're kind of a more cutesy boy group, which I'm always down for, so really like them. Very refreshing. Kepler had a Japanese full album that was so good. It's like finally they're getting something. They announced that they're renewing their contract, not with all the members though, but it gives me hope for ZB1, so I'm gonna be supporting Kepler. Their full Korean comeback is like in a couple days in June, but if this Japanese album is anything like similar, I'm definitely gonna like it. I loved Celebrate, Cruise, Straight Line. Straight Line's probably their best song so far, honestly. So yeah, this would have been like a really amazing like disbandment album, but thankfully the girlies are gonna keep going, I guess. Speaking of like the produce groups, Kim Jae-hwan had a really good album. I think he's still under Wake One Entertainment, and they announced he's going to the military. I think he's the only one from 101 still in that company, so that's kind of surprising. There's all kinds of stuff going on with Daniel right now, and that is like just really sad to me. But wishing him the best. Jaehwan's album was really good. Yook Sungjae from B2B had a really amazing mini album, probably my favorite collective album of the month. It's only like 3 songs, but they're all so good. Be Somebody Without You, Ghost, I think is the other one. I kind of check out pretty much anything that comes out, especially if they're like members of a group. And it's always a good day when I'm pleasantly surprised. Mark from NCT had a cute like single 200. I like the Minhyung version more than the like original version, honestly. It's a little bit more acoustic-y, slower. Lose My Breath by Stray Kids was actually pretty good. It's so catchy. It's so catchy. I have it stuck in my head at all times. And Hyphen had a really interesting like short album project. All the songs on that are so good. Lucifer and Hyphen kind of has a crazy discography, low-key, if you dive into like their B-sides and stuff. I think from what I've heard, this like mini album was to promote their webtoon, Dark Moon I think it's called. Well, their whole lore is that they're like vampires or whatever, but of the Hybe like webtoon series, that's the one I'm most interested in. I have the first volume of the BTS one, like Choco or whatever, but I haven't read it yet. And I'm not really interested in the TXT like Star Seeker one. So yeah, if this is just like a promo for that, there's a lot of effort into this promo because the songs are all so good. Triple S had their like OT24 comeback. That was really good. I like a lot of the songs from it. I have no real interest in the group. That's just too many. 24, like I already stand NCT. Like I don't need another huge group like that, but the song slap. I've liked most of the like music from their subunits that they've been putting out. And then finally, we have to talk about 0 Base 1, You Had Me at Hello. It's kind of wild to me that like a group I'm standing has been having regular comebacks. And it's been so fun this era, like watching all the content, watching all the stages, like everything. I've been so engrossed. I love Feel the Pop. It's so fun. It's so funky. It's so fresh. My favorite song on the album overall is probably Dear Eclipse. It's more of like a slower R&B inspired track. And then I like Sunday Ride. And then I'd probably put Feel the Pop, Sweat, Hello, which is like a ballad, and Solar Power. I'm sorry, I cannot stand Solar Power. The intro makes me cringe. So honestly, that's like their only miss in their whole discography, and the chorus of Crush, in my opinion. So I think they have a pretty good track record. I'm not mad at not liking one song. But yeah, love Feel the Pop. So happy for them. They got like 4 wins this era so far. Good stuff. They're being invited on more like shows, variety type stuff. Their sales are really good. Yes, overall, so happy for the boys. I might be putting out some more like K-pop collecting related content. I decided to pick up another member, so watch that if you're interested, if I ever release it. But yeah, love everything about it. Very excited for probably their fall comeback. They've been doing like season theme stuff. And they're starting a world tour in like December of this year, starting in like Asia, I think. So I'm gonna anticipate early next year they'll come here, hopefully. Very excited about that. So yeah, enough rambling about CP1. Hope you enjoyed this video. Next month is Pride, so I'm anticipating a lot of LGBT plus reads. I'm also traveling for work, and it's gonna be really stressful at work in general. So who knows how active I'll be. I'll try my best, but in the meantime, stay safe, happy, stay healthy, and I'll see you in the next one.